The cafeteria buzzed with the usual chaos of lunchtime at Riverside Elementary. Trays clattered, voices overlapped in excited chatter, and the smell of pizza and apple juice filled the air. Teachers stood along the perimeter, monitoring the organized chaos with practiced ease. But among all the movement and noise, one figure stood perfectly still. Lily Chen stood beside table 7, her lunch tray balanced in her small hands, eyes fixed downward at the empty seat in front of her. Around her, children sat shoulder to shoulder, laughing and trading snacks, completely oblivious to the quiet girl who refused to join them. She stood there like a statue, methodically lifting forkfuls of food to her mouth, while her legs remained locked straight beneath her. Mrs. Olivia Carter noticed her immediately. 23 years of teaching had sharpened Olivia's instincts to a razor's edge. She could spot a fever before a child knew they were sick, sense anxiety before it bloomed into panic, and recognize when something was genuinely wrong versus simple childhood defiance. And something about this new student sent warning bells clanging through her mind. The girl had arrived at Riverside Elementary just 3 days ago, transferred in without much fanfare or explanation. The paperwork had been sparse, listing only a guardian's name, an address on the east side of town, and a note that Lily had previously been homeschooled. No previous school records, no medical alerts, nothing that would explain why an 8-year-old child would refuse to sit during lunch. Olivia watched as another student, a boy named Marcus, looked up at Lily with confusion written across his freckled face. He said something that made the other children at the table giggle, then gestured emphatically at the empty seat beside him. Lily shook her head, a barely perceptible movement, and took another bite of her sandwich. Her knuckles had gone white around the edges of her tray. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy educational stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. The first time Olivia had seen Lily was during morning attendance on Monday. The girl had walked into classroom 3B with her head down, dark hair falling like a curtain around her face, and made her way to the assigned desk without making eye contact with anyone. Olivia had smiled warmly, the way she always did with new students, and said, "Welcome, Lily. We're so glad you're here." Lily had nodded but said nothing. When Olivia gestured to the desk and encouraged her to have a seat and get comfortable, something strange happened. The girl approached the desk, placed her backpack carefully on the floor beside it, and then remained standing. Her hands gripped the edge of the desk, and she stared down at the wooden surface with an intensity that seemed unusual for a child her age. "You can sit down, sweetie," Olivia had said gently, assuming the girl was simply nervous about her first day. Lily had looked up then, just for a moment, and Olivia caught a glimpse of something in those dark eyes. Fear. Not the typical first-day jitters or social anxiety that new students often displayed, but something deeper, something that made Olivia's chest tighten with concern. "I'd rather stand," Lily had whispered, her voice so soft that Olivia almost missed it. Throughout that entire first day, Lily had remained standing at her desk. During reading time, while the other 24 students sat cross-legged on the carpet for story hour, Lily stood at the back of the group. During math lessons, she stood at her desk, leaning forward slightly to write in her workbook. During art class, she stood at the craft table, while every other child sat on the small plastic chairs. Olivia had mentioned it briefly to the school counselor, Mrs. Patricia Hughes, during their afternoon check-in. Patricia had listened thoughtfully, then suggested giving the new student some time to adjust. "Some kids have quirks," she'd said with a kind smile, "especially ones who've been homeschooled. She might just need a few days to feel comfortable." But this was now day 3, and Lily's behavior hadn't changed at all. If anything, it had become more pronounced, more deliberate. She wasn't just preferring to stand. She was actively, desperately avoiding sitting down. The lunch period continued around them. A group of girls at table 4 erupted into laughter over something on one of their phones. The lunch supervisor, Mr. Jenkins, reminded a boy to use his indoor voice. The kitchen staff began preparing for the next lunch wave, and through it all, Lily stood motionless beside table 7, eating her lunch one careful bite at a time. Olivia made her way slowly around the perimeter of the cafeteria, her eyes never leaving the small figure. She watched as Lily shifted her weight from one foot to the other, a slight grimace crossing her face. The girl's legs trembled just barely, as though standing for such a long period was taking a physical toll. But still, she didn't sit. When Marcus waved his hand in front of Lily's face, trying to get her attention, the girl flinched. It was a subtle movement, but Olivia saw it clearly. Lily's entire body went rigid, her shoulders hunching up toward her ears, her grip on the tray tightening until Olivia worried it might crack. Marcus said something else, something Olivia couldn't hear over the cafeteria noise, and pointed at the empty seat one more time. "No," Lily said, loud enough now that Olivia could hear the single word from across the room. "I can't." She watched as confusion bloomed on Marcus's face, followed by the cruel curiosity that children sometimes displayed when they encountered something they didn't understand. He turned to the girl sitting next to him and whispered something behind his hand. Both children looked at Lily and giggled. Olivia felt anger flash hot in her chest, though she knew the children didn't truly understand what they were doing. They were 8 years old, still learning empathy, still developing the social skills that would eventually teach them kindness. But seeing Lily's face crumple slightly, seeing the way she bit her lower lip and blinked rapidly against tears, made Olivia want to march over there and deliver a lecture on compassion that would make them all squirm. Instead, she approached calmly, professionally, with the measured steps of someone who had diffused countless childhood conflicts over the years. She placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder and said, "How's lunch going over here?" The children immediately straightened, their laughter dying away. Marcus looked up at her with wide eyes, suddenly aware that he might be in trouble, even if he wasn't sure why. "Good, Mrs. Carter," he said quickly. Olivia smiled at him, then turned her attention to Lily. Up close, she could see more details that concerned her. The girl's face was pale, almost gray in the fluorescent lighting. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, suggesting sleep deprivation or stress. Her clothes, while clean, hung loosely on her frame, as though she'd recently lost weight or the garments belonged to someone larger. "Lily," Olivia said softly, crouching down slightly so they were at eye level. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" Lily's eyes darted to Olivia's face, then away again just as quickly. "Fine," she whispered. "I noticed you've been standing during lunch. Would you like to sit down? There's plenty of room." The reaction was immediate and visceral. Lily's eyes went wide, genuine panic flooding across her features. She shook her head frantically, taking a small step backward. No, I can't. Please don't make me." The other children at the table had gone quiet now, watching the exchange with curious eyes. Olivia felt their attention like a weight. Knew that whatever she said next would be dissected and discussed the moment she walked away. She kept her voice calm and reassuring, the tone she'd perfected over 2 decades of working with frightened children. "It's okay, honey. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. I was just concerned because standing for so long must be tiring." Lily's breathing had quickened, her chest rising and falling rapidly beneath her oversized sweater. "I'm not tired," she said, though her trembling legs suggested otherwise. "I'm fine standing. I like standing." Olivia studied her for a long moment, taking in every detail. The way Lily held herself so rigidly, as though any relaxation might lead to collapse. the way her eyes kept darting toward the clock on the wall, as if she were counting down the minutes until she could escape. The way her hands shook slightly as she set her tray down on the table, still refusing to sit even though she was clearly exhausted. "All right," Olivia said finally, straightening up. "But if you change your mind or if you need anything at all, you come find me, okay?" Lily nodded, relief washing over her face so clearly that it made Olivia's heart ache. The girl picked up her tray again, holding it like a shield between herself and the world. As Olivia walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just witnessed something significant, something that went far beyond simple childhood stubbornness or adjustment anxiety. The fear in Lily's eyes had been real, profound, and completely disproportionate to the simple request to sit down. She made a mental note to document everything she'd observed: the standing during class, the refusal to sit at lunch, the trembling legs, the panic when asked to sit, the weight loss, the exhaustion. Taken individually, each observation might seem minor, but together they painted a picture that Olivia recognized from her years of mandatory reporter training. Something was very wrong in Lily Chen's life, and Olivia was determined to find out what. That afternoon, after the final bell rang and the students scattered like leaves in the wind, Olivia sat at her desk with a yellow legal pad in front of her. She'd learned long ago that memory was unreliable, that details faded and timelines blurred if she didn't write everything down immediately. So she documented everything she'd observed about Lily over the past 3 days, her pen moving steadily across the page. Day 1, student refused to sit at desk. Stood for entire school day, approximately 6 hours, stood during story time while other students sat on carpet. No eye contact. Minimal verbal responses. Appeared anxious when encouraged to sit. Day 2. Continued standing behavior. During recess, observed student kneeling on grass rather than sitting on bench. When asked why, student stated she preferred it that way. Noticed student grimacing when transitioning from standing to kneeling position. Ate lunch standing at cafeteria table. Other students beginning to notice and comment. Day 3. Standing behavior persists. Student appeared more fatigued, swaying slightly during afternoon lessons, legs visibly trembling. When directly asked to sit during lunch, student became panicked. Exact words: "No, I can't. Please don't make me." Physical signs of distress including rapid breathing, wide eyes, backward movement suggesting fear response. Olivia set down her pen and read over her notes, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. She'd been a mandatory reporter for her entire teaching career, trained to recognize signs of abuse and neglect. But training and reality were two different things. Training happened in air-conditioned conference rooms with handouts and hypothetical scenarios. Reality was an 8-year-old girl with fear in her eyes, standing through lunch because sitting caused her some kind of distress that Olivia was only beginning to understand. She picked up her phone and dialed Patricia Hughes's extension. The school counselor answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Patricia speaking." "Patricia, it's Olivia Carter. Do you have a few minutes? I need to talk to you about Lily Chen." There was a pause, then the sound of papers shuffling. "The new transfer student, the one who won't sit down." "That's the one. I'm concerned about her, Patricia. Really concerned." 20 minutes later, they sat across from each other in Patricia's small office, surrounded by motivational posters and a shelf full of feelings charts and therapeutic toys. Patricia listened intently as Olivia walked through her observations, occasionally making notes in her own file. "And you said she became panicked when you asked her to sit?" Patricia asked, her pen hovering over her notepad. "Not just panicked, terrified, like I'd asked her to do something that would result in immediate harm." Olivia leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly together. Patricia, I've been teaching for 23 years. I've seen kids with behavioral issues, kids with anxiety, kids with sensory processing disorders. This is different. This is a child who is physically afraid to sit down. Patricia tapped her pen against her lips, thinking, "Have you noticed any visible injuries, bruising, marks, anything like that?" Her clothes are baggy, and she wears long sleeves and pants even though it's been warm this week. I haven't seen any obvious injuries, but that doesn't mean they're not there. What about her guardian? Have you had any contact? Olivia shook her head. Not yet. The emergency contact information lists a woman named Sandra Chen. The relationship is marked as aunt, though there's no other family information in the file. I was planning to call this evening. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she said, "I think you should make that call. Feel out the situation, see how the guardian responds. Sometimes you can tell a lot from a phone conversation. If anything feels off, or if you get more concrete evidence of abuse, we'll need to make a report to Child Protective Services. And if the guardian is defensive or refuses to cooperate, then we document that too. Everything goes on record." Patricia met Olivia's eyes, her expression serious. "You're doing the right thing by paying attention. A lot of teachers would have dismissed this as quirky behavior or adjustment issues. Your instincts are good, Olivia. Trust them." That evening, Olivia sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold beside her and Lily's emergency contact information in front of her. She'd made hundreds of parent phone calls over the years, but this one felt different. This one carried weight. She dialed the number and waited, her heart beating faster than normal. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, a woman answered, her voice sharp and impatient. "Yes? Hello, is this Sandra Chen?" "Who's asking?" Olivia kept her voice professional and warm, the tone she used for all parent communications. "This is Mrs. Olivia Carter, Lily's teacher at Riverside Elementary. I'm calling to introduce myself and check in about how Lily is adjusting to her new school." There was a long pause. Then Sandra said, "She's fine. Is there a problem?" "No problem at all. I just wanted to touch base about a few things I've noticed. Lily seems to be having some difficulty with sitting during class and at lunch. She prefers to stand, and I wanted to make sure there wasn't a medical reason we should be aware of. Sometimes children have injuries or conditions that we need to accommodate." The silence that followed was heavy, almost oppressive. Olivia could hear breathing on the other end of the line, but nothing else. When Sandra finally spoke, her voice had gone cold. "Lily is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with her." "I understand, and I'm glad to hear that. It's just that standing for 6 or 7 hours a day can be quite tiring for a child, and I've noticed she seems exhausted by the afternoon. If there's anything we can do to help her feel more comfortable—" "I said she's fine." Sandra's voice had risen slightly, taking on a defensive edge that made Olivia's instincts flare. "Maybe if you spent less time making up problems and more time actually teaching, Lily would adjust better. She's always been a difficult child, stubborn. She probably just wants attention." Olivia forced herself to remain calm, though anger was beginning to simmer beneath her professional demeanor. "I can assure you, Miss Chen, my concern comes from a place of wanting to help Lily succeed. If she's dealing with any challenges at home, or if there's anything going on that might be affecting her behavior at school, it would be helpful for us to know so we can provide appropriate support. There is nothing going on at home. Lily is fed, clothed, and sheltered, which is more than a lot of kids can say. If she wants to stand, let her stand. I don't see why this requires a phone call. Ms. Chen, are we done here? I have things to do." Olivia closed her eyes, choosing her next words carefully. "I just want to make sure Lily is healthy and safe. That's my primary concern as her teacher. She's fine. Stop bothering us. The line went dead. Olivia sat staring at her phone for a long moment, her tea forgotten, her mind racing. The conversation had been brief but revealing. Sandra Chen had been immediately defensive, hostile even, when asked simple questions about her niece's well-being. She dismissed Olivia's concerns without offering any real explanation for Lily's behavior. And the comment about Lily being a difficult child had carried an edge of resentment that made Olivia's skin crawl. She picked up her legal pad and added notes about the phone conversation, including Sandra's exact words where she could remember them. Then she sent a brief email to Patricia Hughes, summarizing the call and her concerns. The next morning, Olivia arrived at school an hour early, which was unusual even for her. She couldn't shake the feeling that time was critical, that every day Lily spent in whatever situation she was in at home was another day of potential harm. She'd barely slept, her mind churning through possibilities and scenarios, each more troubling than the last. Patricia was already in her office when Olivia arrived, a fresh cup of coffee steaming on her desk. She looked up as Olivia entered and gestured to the chair across from her. "I got your email. The phone call didn't go well." "That's putting it mildly." Olivia sank into the chair and relayed the entire conversation, including Sandra's defensive tone and abrupt dismissal of her concerns. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When Olivia finished, she said, "That's concerning. Very concerning. A parent's first reaction to a teacher's concern should be curiosity or cooperation, not hostility. The fact that she immediately became defensive suggests she's hiding something." "That's what I thought too. So what do we do now?" "We continue observing and documenting. We look for any physical evidence of abuse. And we try to build rapport with Lily so she feels safe enough to talk to us." Patricia pulled out a thick binder labeled Mandatory Reporting Protocols and flipped it open. "According to district policy, we need reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect to make a report to CPS. Right now, we have concerning behavior and a hostile guardian, but no concrete evidence. We need more." Olivia nodded, though frustration churned in her gut. She understood the need for evidence, understood that false reports could destroy families and traumatize children unnecessarily. But every instinct she had was screaming that Lily was in danger, and the procedural requirements felt like unnecessary obstacles between her student and safety. "I'll keep watching," Olivia said, "and I'll try to talk to her. See if she'll open up." "Be gentle," Patricia cautioned. "If there is abuse and if Lily has been threatened or intimidated into silence, pushing too hard could make her shut down completely. Let her set the pace." The opportunity came sooner than Olivia expected. During morning recess, while the other children scattered across the playground in noisy clusters, Lily stood alone near the fence line, watching the others play but making no move to join them. Olivia approached slowly, casually, as though she just happened to be walking in that direction. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she said, stopping a few feet away from Lily. The girl glanced at her, then back at the playground. "Yes, ma'am. You know you're welcome to join the other kids. I see some girls from our class playing hopscotch over there." Lily shook her head. "I'm okay here." Olivia leaned against the fence, following Lily's gaze across the playground. They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Olivia said, "I wanted to apologize if I made you uncomfortable yesterday at lunch. That wasn't my intention." "It's okay," Lily whispered. "I was just worried about you. Standing all day must be tiring." Lily's hands gripped the chain-link fence, her knuckles going white. "I'm used to it." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that made Olivia's heart sink. Used to it. Not "I prefer it" or "I like it." Used to it, as though standing all day was something she'd had to adapt to out of necessity rather than choice. "Lily," Olivia said gently. Can I ask you something? And I want you to know that no matter what you tell me, you're not going to be in trouble. I'm asking because I care about you and want to make sure you're okay. The girl's entire body had gone tense. She didn't look at Olivia, but she gave a slight nod. Why won't you sit down? The silence stretched out so long that Olivia thought Lily might not answer at all. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the girl said, Because it hurts too much. The world seemed to narrow down to just those 5 words. Because it hurts too much. Olivia's breath caught in her throat, and she had to force herself to remain calm, to keep her expression neutral, even as alarm bells rang through every corner of her mind. She crouched down slowly, bringing herself to Lily's eye level, careful not to touch the girl or make any sudden movements that might frighten her. It hurts to sit down? Olivia asked softly, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. Lily nodded, still gripping the fence, still refusing to meet Olivia's eyes. A tear slid down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly with the back of her hand, as though crying itself was something she'd been taught to hide. Can you tell me where it hurts, sweetheart? The girl's lower lip trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. My legs. The back of my legs and my... She paused, her voice dropping even lower. My bottom. Olivia felt ice slide down her spine. She kept her voice gentle, non-threatening, even as her mind raced through the implications of what Lily was telling her. How long has it been hurting? A while. A long time. Lily's words came faster now, as though a dam had broken and everything was spilling out at once. I'm not supposed to tell anyone. Aunt Sandra said if I told anyone, things would get worse. She said they'd take me away and put me somewhere terrible where nobody would care about me at all. She said I'm lucky to have a home and I should stop being ungrateful. Oh, honey. Olivia's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She wanted to reach out and hold this child, to promise her that everything would be okay. But she knew that premature promises could be just as damaging as the abuse itself. You're not being ungrateful, and you're very brave for telling me this. Can you tell me how your legs and your bottom got hurt? Lily's face crumpled, and suddenly she was crying in earnest, tears streaming down her face as her small body shook with suppressed sobs. I have to kneel. When Aunt Sandra says I've been bad, I have to kneel on the kitchen floor, sometimes for hours. She puts rice on the floor first, the hard, uncooked kind, and I have to kneel on it, and I can't move or make noise or it gets longer. The words came out in a rush, between gasps and hiccups, and Olivia had to strain to hear them all. Her own eyes were burning now, but she blinked back tears, knowing she needed to stay strong for this child who had been anything but strong for far too long. And sometimes, Lily continued, her voice breaking, sometimes she uses a belt on the back of my legs. She says it's discipline. She says her parents did it to her and she turned out fine. She says I need to learn respect and obedience, and that children these days are too soft. The girl looked up at Olivia for the first time, her eyes red and pleading. Am I too soft? Is that why I hurt so much? No. The word came out more forcefully than Olivia intended, but she couldn't help it. No, Lily, you are not too soft. What's happening to you is not discipline. It's not okay. None of this is your fault. Do you understand me? You have done nothing wrong. Lily stared at her, disbelief and hope warring across her tear-stained face. But Aunt Sandra says, I don't care what Aunt Sandra says. What she's doing to you is wrong. Hurting a child is wrong. Making a child kneel on rice until they're injured is wrong. Hitting a child with a belt is wrong. And I'm going to make sure it stops. The girl's eyes went wide with fresh panic. No, you can't tell her I told you. She'll be so angry. Please, Mrs. Carter, please don't say anything. I can handle it. I've been handling it. I shouldn't have said anything. Please, Lily, listen to me. Olivia reached out slowly, telegraphing her movement, and placed her hand gently on Lily's shoulder. The girl flinched but didn't pull away. "I know you're scared. I know Aunt Sandra has told you terrible things about what will happen if you tell someone, but those things aren't true. There are people whose job it is to keep children safe, and they're very good at their jobs. I'm going to call them, and they're going to help you. You won't have to go back to Aunt Sandra's house. You won't have to kneel on rice anymore. You won't be hit with a belt anymore." "But where will I go?" Fresh tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. "I don't have anywhere else. My parents died in a car accident last year, and Aunt Sandra is my only family. If I leave her house, I'll have nowhere." The full picture was coming together now, painted in shades of tragedy and cruelty. A little girl who'd lost her parents, placed with an aunt who saw her as a burden, who took out her frustrations and resentments through systematic abuse disguised as discipline. Olivia felt rage building in her chest, hot and righteous, but she pushed it down. Lily needed calm reassurance right now, not anger. "You will have somewhere to go," Olivia promised. "There are families who open their homes to children who need a safe place to stay. They're called foster families, and they're carefully chosen and trained to take care of kids. You might stay with one of them for a while just until we figure out the best permanent solution for you. But I promise you, wherever you go, it will be safe. No one will hurt you there." Lily wiped at her face with both hands, trying to compose herself, even as her body continued to shake. "Will I still go to school here? I like this school. I like your class." The question nearly broke Olivia's heart. Here was a child who'd been systematically abused, who was in constant pain, who was terrified of her guardian, and she was worried about staying in a school she'd only attended for 3 days. It spoke volumes about the depth of her need for stability, for something safe and predictable in a world that had been turned upside down. "I don't know, honey. That will depend on where your foster family lives. But wherever you go to school, the teachers there will take care of you, just like I'm taking care of you now, and you can always write to me or call me if you need to talk. I'm not going to disappear from your life just because you might go to a different school." Lily nodded slowly, processing this information. Around them, the playground continued its chaotic dance of childhood, completely unaware of the life-changing conversation happening by the fence. Children shrieked with laughter, balls bounced, jump ropes spun through the air. Normal, everyday activities that suddenly seemed almost surreal in contrast to what Lily had been enduring. "What happens now?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Now I'm going to take you to see Mrs. Hughes, our school counselor. She's a very kind woman, and she's going to want to talk to you about what you've told me. Then we're going to make some phone calls to people who can help. It might feel scary and there might be a lot of questions, but I'm going to be with you the whole time. You're not alone anymore, Lily. Do you understand? You're not alone." The girl nodded again, then surprised Olivia by stepping forward and wrapping her thin arms around Olivia's waist. She pressed her face against Olivia's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for asking. Thank you for caring." Olivia held her carefully, mindful of potential injuries, and blinked back tears. "You don't have to thank me, sweetheart. This is what adults are supposed to do. We're supposed to protect you." They stood like that for a long moment before Olivia gently guided Lily toward the school building. Patricia Hughes was in her office when they arrived, and one look at Olivia's face told her everything she needed to know. She ushered them both inside and closed the door, creating a bubble of privacy in the busy school. Over the next hour, Lily told her story again, this time with Patricia gently guiding her through the details. The school counselor was masterful at her job, asking questions in a way that didn't feel like an interrogation, offering tissues and water and reassurance at exactly the right moments. Olivia sat beside Lily the entire time, holding her hand when the girl reached for it, providing silent support as the full horror of her situation came to light. The kneeling on rice had started almost immediately after Lily moved in with Sandra Chen. Any perceived disobedience, any mistake, any behavior that Sandra deemed inappropriate resulted in punishment. Lily would be ordered to the kitchen where Sandra would spread dry rice across the tile floor in a thin layer, then force Lily to kneel on it. The first time had been 15 minutes, but the duration had increased steadily as Sandra's anger and resentment grew. By the time Lily enrolled at Riverside Elementary, the punishments regularly lasted 3 or 4 hours. The belt came later, introduced after Lily had cried during a kneeling session and disturbed Sandra's television program. Sandra had taken off her leather belt and struck Lily across the backs of her thighs, telling her that if she couldn't kneel quietly, she'd give her something real to cry about. After that, the belt became a regular part of the punishment routine. "She keeps it on the kitchen counter now," Lily said, her voice flat and distant, as though she were describing someone else's life. "So I see it all the time. She says it's a reminder to behave." Sometimes she makes me get it for her when I've done something wrong. She makes me bring it to her and then kneel down and wait. Patricia's pen moved steadily across her notepad, documenting everything in detail that would later become part of an official report. Her face remained calm and professional, but Olivia could see the muscle ticking in her jaw, the slight tremor in her hand that betrayed her emotional response to Lily's testimony. "Lily, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly," Patricia said. "Has Aunt Sandra ever touched you inappropriately? By that I mean, has she touched you in places that made you feel uncomfortable, or in ways that felt wrong?" Lily shook her head. "No, just the belt on my legs, and sometimes she grabs my arm really hard when she's mad, hard enough to leave marks. But she never touches me the other way." "That's good. That's very helpful to know." Patricia set down her pen and leaned forward, her expression warm and kind. "Lily, you've been incredibly brave today. I know this wasn't easy to talk about. Mrs. Carter and I are going to make some phone calls now, okay? Some people are going to come to the school to talk to you, people whose job it is to help kids who are in situations like yours. They might be police officers or social workers. They're going to ask you some of the same questions I just asked, and I know that might feel repetitive, but it's important. Can you do that? Will Aunt Sandra find out? Will she know I told?" "She will find out eventually," Patricia said honestly, "but by the time she does, you won't be in her house anymore. She won't be able to hurt you." "I can promise you that." Lily took a shaky breath and nodded. "Okay, I can talk to them." "Good girl. While we wait for them to arrive, you're going to stay right here in my office. You can read a book or draw or just rest. Mrs. Carter needs to get back to her class, but I'll be right here with you the whole time." Olivia squeezed Lily's hand one more time before standing. "I'll check on you soon, sweetheart. You're doing great." In the hallway outside Patricia's office, Olivia leaned against the wall and took several deep breaths, trying to steady herself. Her hands were shaking, and she felt simultaneously furious and heartbroken. 23 years of teaching, and she'd never encountered a case quite like this. She'd reported suspicions of abuse before, had seen children removed from dangerous homes, but she'd never had a child confide in her so directly, had never been the one to actually hear the words describing such systematic cruelty. Patricia emerged from her office a moment later, pulling the door closed behind her. "I'm calling CPS right now. This is textbook physical abuse. The police will probably want to conduct a welfare check at the home, and they'll likely get an emergency removal order. Lily won't be going back there." The call to Child Protective Services took less than 10 minutes, but to Olivia it felt like hours. She stood in the main office with Patricia, listening as the counselor relayed Lily's disclosure in clinical, professional language that somehow made it sound even more horrific. forced kneeling on uncooked rice for extended periods, repeated striking with a leather belt across the backs of the thighs, visible injuries that prevented the child from sitting, fear of the guardian, threats of worse consequences if the child disclosed the abuse. The CPS intake worker on the other end of the line asked clarifying questions, and Patricia answered each one precisely, referring to her detailed notes. Yes, the child had disclosed directly to school staff. Yes, there were physical symptoms consistent with the alleged abuse. No, there was no indication of sexual abuse. Yes, the child was currently in a safe location at the school. Yes, the guardian had been hostile when contacted about the child's unusual behavior. When Patricia hung up, she turned to Olivia with an expression of grim satisfaction. They're sending someone immediately, a caseworker named Jennifer Martinez. She should be here within the hour. And she's coordinating with the police department to do a welfare check at Sandra Chen's residence. They'll collect evidence, photograph the kitchen, confiscate the belt if they can find it. They'll build a case. And Lily? She'll be taken into emergency protective custody today. They'll do a medical examination to document her injuries, then place her with an emergency foster family while they work on finding a more permanent solution. Jennifer said they have several excellent foster families in the area who specialize in trauma cases. Olivia nodded, relief and sadness mixing in her chest. Relief that Lily would be safe, that the abuse would stop today, right now. Sadness for everything the girl had already endured, for the trauma she'd carry with her for years to come, for the loss of her parents and now the loss of her only remaining family member, even if that family member had been hurting her. "I need to get back to my class," Olivia said, glancing at her watch. "But will you call me when Jennifer arrives? I want to see Lily again before she leaves." "Of course. And Olivia?" Patricia reached out and squeezed her arm. "You did good today. You trusted your instincts, you built rapport with that child, and you gave her the courage to speak up. That's the difference between a teacher who does their job and a teacher who changes lives. You changed Lily's life today." The words stayed with Olivia as she returned to her classroom, where her students were working on a math worksheet under the supervision of the teaching assistant. They looked up when she entered. 24 curious faces wondering where she'd been, but they asked no questions and returned to their work when she smiled and gave them a thumbs up. She sat at her desk and pulled out her legal pad, adding today's disclosure to her documentation. She wrote down everything Lily had said, word for word where she could remember it, knowing that these notes might be needed for court proceedings or case reviews. The act of writing helped center her, helped transform the emotional chaos of the morning into something concrete and actionable. 45 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "They're here," Olivia asked her teaching assistant to supervise the class and hurried back to the counselor's office. A woman in her mid-30s stood in the hallway, professional but warm, with kind eyes and a folder tucked under her arm. She introduced herself as Jennifer Martinez from Child Protective Services and shook Olivia's hand firmly. "Mrs. Carter, I understand you're the teacher who first noticed Lily's distress. I'd like to talk with you briefly before I speak with Lily, if that's all right." They moved to an empty conference room and Olivia walked Jennifer through everything she'd observed over the past 3 days, then detailed this morning's conversation with Lily. Jennifer listened intently, making notes and asking occasional questions. "The standing behavior was the first red flag?" Jennifer asked. "Yes. In my experience, children don't refuse to sit without a reason. They might fidget or slouch or sit improperly, but complete refusal suggests either a medical issue or pain. When I learned there was no medical reason in her file, I started looking for other explanations." "And the phone call with the aunt. Can you tell me about that interaction?" Olivia recounted Sandra Chen's hostile response, her immediate defensiveness, her dismissal of legitimate concerns about Lily's well-being. She was aggressive in a way that felt like she was protecting herself rather than protecting Lily. Parents who genuinely don't understand their child's behavior at school are usually curious or concerned. She was neither. Jennifer nodded, adding more notes to her file. That tracks with what we typically see in abuse cases. The abuser often perceives outside interest as a threat, something to be shut down as quickly as possible. They don't want anyone looking too closely at the child or asking too many questions. What happens now? I mean, I know you're taking Lily into protective custody, but what's the timeline? What will her next few days look like? I'm going to conduct my own interview with Lily, record her statement officially. Then I'm taking her to County General Hospital, where a pediatric specialist will examine her and document her injuries. We'll photograph everything, which I know sounds invasive, but it's necessary for building a case. After the medical exam, I'll take her to a foster home where she'll stay until we can conduct a full investigation and have a court hearing. That usually happens within 72 hours. And Sandra Chen. Police are at the residence now, if they find evidence supporting Lily's claims, and I have no doubt they will give in the specific details she provided. Sandra will be arrested and charged with child abuse. Whether she's released on bail or held in custody will be up to a judge. Either way, she won't have access to Lily. We'll get an emergency protective order today. It was everything Olivia had hoped to hear, but it still felt surreal. Just this morning, Lily had been standing in her classroom, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Now, hours later, the machinery of child protection was in motion, grinding toward justice and safety. It had all happened so fast, and yet it had also taken 3 days of careful observation and documentation. 3 days that might have been 3 weeks or 3 months if Olivia hadn't trusted her instincts. "Can I see her before you leave?" Olivia asked. "Of course." "I think she'd appreciate that." Lily was still in Patricia's office, curled up in one of the large armchairs with a picture book open in her lap, though she didn't appear to be reading it. She looked up when Olivia entered and her face brightened slightly. "Mrs. Carter." "Hi, sweetheart." Olivia knelt beside the chair. "Miss Martinez is here. She's going to take you somewhere safe now, just like I promised. Are you ready?" Lily's expression was complicated, a mixture of fear and hope and exhaustion. "I think so." "Will it hurt?" "The examination at the hospital." "It might be uncomfortable," Olivia said honestly, "but the doctors will be very gentle. They just need to look at your injuries and take some pictures so that everyone knows what happened to you. It's important evidence that will help keep you safe. And I'm really not going back to Aunt Sandra's house? Never. You're never going back there." Lily closed the picture book and set it aside. She stood slowly, grimacing slightly as she straightened her legs, a reminder of the pain she'd been carrying for so long. "Mrs. Carter, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think my parents would be ashamed of me for getting Aunt Sandra in trouble? She's my mom's sister, and my mom loved her. I don't want my parents to think I'm a bad person." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time she let them fall. She reached out and cupped Lily's face gently in her hands. "Oh, honey, no. Your parents would be so proud of you. They would be proud that you were brave enough to tell the truth. They would be proud that you protected yourself, and they would be heartbroken to know what Sandra did to you. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Your mom might have loved her sister, but she would have loved you more, and she would want you to be safe above all else. You haven't done anything wrong. You've done everything right." Lily nodded, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. She stepped forward and hugged Olivia again, holding on tight. "Thank you for believing me. Aunt Sandra always said no one would believe me if I told. She said adults always trust other adults over children." "Some adults might," Olivia admitted, "but good adults, adults who really care about children, we listen. And we believe. And we act. That's what teachers are supposed to do. That's what parents are supposed to do. That's what all adults are supposed to do when a child needs help. Jennifer Martinez approached gently, her voice soft. Lily, I'm Jennifer. I know this is scary, but I promise I'm going to take good care of you. We're going to get through this together, okay? Lily released Olivia and turned to face Jennifer, squaring her small shoulders in a gesture of courage that made Olivia's heart ache. Okay, I'm ready. As Jennifer led Lily toward the door, the girl paused and looked back at Olivia one more time. Will I see you again? I'll visit you, Olivia promised. As soon as they tell me where you're staying, I'll come visit. And when everything is settled, if you're still in the area, maybe you can come back to Riverside Elementary. We'd love to have you in our class again. Lily managed a small smile, the first real smile Olivia had seen from her. Then she walked out of the office with Jennifer, her small hand clasped in the social worker's larger one, heading toward a future that was uncertain but infinitely safer than her past. The days that followed were a blur of statements and paperwork and phone calls. The police collected extensive evidence from Sandra Chen's home, including the belt with Lily's DNA on it, photographs of the kitchen floor where the abuse had occurred, and even a bag of rice that matched the description Lily had given. Sandra was arrested and charged with multiple counts of child abuse and child endangerment. She maintained her innocence at first, claiming she'd only been disciplining a difficult child, but the medical evidence was overwhelming. The examination at County General had revealed exactly what Lily had described: extensive bruising and scarring on the backs of her thighs from repeated strikes with a belt, deep tissue damage and scarring on her knees from prolonged kneeling on hard rice, and signs of chronic stress and malnutrition. The injuries were documented in excruciating detail, photographed from multiple angles, and added to the case file that would eventually be presented to a judge. Olivia testified at the emergency custody hearing, describing her observations and Lily's disclosure. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with no patience for child abusers, granted the protective order immediately and ordered that Sandra Chen have no contact with Lily pending the criminal trial. Lily was placed with a foster family experienced in trauma care, a couple named Robert and Maria Santos, who lived 20 minutes from Riverside Elementary. 3 weeks after that terrible day by the playground fence, Olivia received a phone call she'd been hoping for. It was Maria Santos asking if Lily could return to Riverside Elementary to finish out the school year. The Santos family wanted to maintain as much stability as possible in Lily's life, and Lily had specifically requested to return to Mrs. Carter's class. On a Monday morning in early December, Lily walked back into classroom 3B. She looked different. Her clothes fit properly now, her face had filled out slightly with proper nutrition, and the dark circles under her eyes had faded. But the biggest difference was in her posture. She walked with her head up, made eye contact when Olivia greeted her, and when she reached her desk, she pulled out her chair and sat down. She sat down. The simple act brought tears to Olivia's eyes, though she blinked them back quickly. Lily looked up at her and smiled, a real genuine smile that lit up her entire face. I can sit now, she said proudly. It doesn't hurt anymore. The doctor said I'm healing really well. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so glad. As the morning progressed, Olivia watched Lily interact with her classmates, saw her raise her hand to answer questions, heard her laugh during a silly moment in their science lesson. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not complete, but beginning. A child who'd been trapped in pain and fear was now free to simply be a child. At lunch that day, Olivia made a point of walking through the cafeteria. Lily sat at table 7, surrounded by other children from their class, eating her sandwich and chattering about the upcoming winter concert. When she caught Olivia's eye, she waved enthusiastically. Olivia waved back, her heart full. The legal proceedings would continue for months. Sandra Chen would eventually be convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison, with mandatory parenting classes and supervised visitation only if Lily agreed to it when she was older. Lily would remain with the Santos family, who would eventually become her adoptive parents after it was determined that no other suitable relatives could be found. She would attend therapy to process her trauma, would have nightmares and setbacks and hard days, but she would also have good days, great days, days where she felt safe and loved and normal. But all of that was in the future. Right now, in this moment, what mattered was that a child was sitting at lunch, surrounded by friends, in no pain at all. What mattered was that someone had noticed, had cared, had acted. What mattered was that the system had worked the way it was supposed to work, protecting a vulnerable child from harm. That evening, after her students had gone home and the school had quieted, Olivia sat at her desk and updated her legal pad one final time. She wrote, Day 21. Lily returned to class today. She sat at her desk. She smiled. She laughed. She is beginning to heal. The system worked. A child is safe. She closed the legal pad and filed it away, knowing it would eventually be archived with all the other documentation from the case. Then she gathered her things and headed home, satisfied that she'd done what every teacher, every adult, every human being should do when they suspect a child is in danger. She'd paid attention, she'd asked questions, she'd believed the child, and she'd acted. Sometimes that's all it takes to save a life. Paying attention, asking questions, believing, acting. And sometimes that's everything. If you've been moved by Lily's story, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Stories like this remind us how crucial it is to watch out for the children in our communities and to trust our instincts when something doesn't seem right. If you found this story meaningful, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with others who might benefit from hearing it. Every share could potentially help another child like Lily find their voice and their safety. Teachers, social workers, counselors, and everyday people make a difference every single day by simply choosing to care. Thank you for watching, and remember, if you ever suspect a child is being harmed, speak up. You could be their only hope.